the neighbor next door. What I am going to tell you will make you think that I deserved it, or that it's somehow because of who I am. But trust me, I wouldn't wish this on anyone. I will omit my name for legal reasons, but it's time for me to talk about the horrors I lived through. It began so innocently. My neighbor, Greg, seemed like a normal guy when he moved in next door. Tall, muscular, always out for a jog or working out in his garage. We exchanged pleasantries, small talk here and there. You wouldn't think twice about someone like him. He invited me over a few times to hang out, maybe work out together in his garage gym. I'm into fitness too, so it seemed like a good way to make a new friend. But every time he asked, something in my gut told me not to go. There was always a strange vibe around Greg, something that made my skin crawl. He was too insistent, too friendly. And that smile, there was something unsettling behind it. I brushed it off as paranoia. He'd ask again, casually, each time we ran into each other. He seemed like a good guy. Why not give it a shot? One evening, after weeks of dodging his invitations, I finally gave in. I figured I'd go over for a bit, lift some weights, and be done with it. I wish I'd never stepped foot in that house. The moment I crossed his threshold, something felt wrong. The house was too quiet, too pristine, like no one really lived there. He led me down to the basement where he had a home gym set up. It was dimly lit, with weights stacked neatly in the corner and a workout bench in the middle of the room. But there was something else down there, something darker, hidden in the shadows. As we started lifting, Greg began talking about his life, how he had always been a lone wolf, how he didn't fit in anywhere. The conversation took a strange turn when he started asking personal questions, probing into my life in ways that felt invasive. I tried to change the subject, but he wasn't letting up. Then, out of nowhere, he attacked. It happened so fast I barely had time to react. One minute I was setting down a dumbbell, and the next he was on me, pinning me down with his massive weight. I struggled, but he was too strong. He locked me in shackles that were already bolted to the wall, hidden behind the workout gear. That's when I realized this was planned. He had set me up from the very beginning. The basement wasn't just a gym. It was a prison. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw them. Two other guys, athletic and around my age, chained and gagged in the far corner. They were built like me, muscular, 25 to 30 years old. It was clear this wasn't a coincidence. Greg had a type, a standard, and we fit perfectly into it. He was feeding a sick demand. His victims were not chosen at random. We were all picked for a reason, athletic guys, but none as big as him. I realized with a cold wave of dread that Greg was selling our pain. He was streaming it live on the deep web for people willing to pay to see us suffer. For days, maybe weeks, possible months, I lost track of time. He kept us down there, bound and helpless. The torture was relentless. The worst part wasn't just sexual assaults, beatings, or the psychological games he played. It was the sick requests from faceless strangers. Greg would bring his laptop down, and each session was worse than the last. People would pay to watch us bleed, suffer, and beg for mercy. He cut fingers, used electroshocks, toys, and at times the pain was unbearable. But the real horror came when someone paid enough for him to dismember a victim. I can't even put into words the sounds, the sight of someone losing a hand, an arm, a foot, piece by piece. And the blood, the smell of it still haunts me. No matter how much I scrub, I still feel it on my skin, in my nose. One night, after a particularly brutal session, I saw my chance. Greg had become careless, leaving the keys to the shackles within my reach. My hands were raw from trying to break free, but adrenaline surged through me as I grabbed the keys and quietly unlocked my chains. I freed the other two guys, but one of them, too weak from the torture, begged me to leave him. He knew he wouldn't make it. With a heavy heart, I left him there, promising to send help. The other guy and I crept up the stairs, our hearts pounding. Just as we reached the front door, Greg appeared at the top of the stairs, knife in hand, his eyes wild. He lunged at us, and we barely managed to push him aside. The other guy made it out, but Greg caught me by the leg, dragging me back into the house. In that moment, I thought it was over for me. But then something snapped. I grabbed a heavy dumbbell and swung it at his head with every ounce of strength I had. He collapsed, and I didn't wait to see if he was dead or unconscious. I just ran. I escaped that house, but the horrors of that basement will never leave me. Greg disappeared without a trace. By the time the authorities arrived, there was no evidence, no bodies, no shackles, nothing. The basement was spotless, as if nothing had ever happened. But I know the truth. I'll never forget the faces of the other victims, the sound of their screams, the smell of the blood. Even though I made it out alive, I'm still trapped in that basement. The nightmares will never stop. I'll always hear the screams. I'll always feel the weight of the blood on my hands, and the horrors that followed me out of that house will never leave me.